why even after a 9-1 season, the Irish eyes aren't smiling, with Notre Dame head coach Lou Holtz up close. For any other school, a 9-win, 1-loss season with victories over Penn State and USC, that one the 10th straight time, plus a hard-fought time with arch rival Michigan, would be considered a terrific year. But this isn't any other school. It's Notre Dame and Lou Holtz, and a Cotton Bowl or Orange Bowl invitation, riding a 6-game win streak, hardly seems good enough to the unforgiving Irish fans. Notre Dame, probably no football team in the world, is as universally beloved and reviled. And in this season alone, rarely has there been as much exhilaration, frustration, and controversy. Today, Lou Holtz answering the skeptics and the critics after his 7th and most scrutinized season. It's Today, Up Close. Now here joining us up close, the head coach at Notre Dame, Lou Holtz. Good to see you, Lou.
Thank you. Very glad to be with you.
This has really been a roller coaster of a year. I mean, a lot of lows and a lot of highs. And I want to talk about how one, after all these years, deals with the anxieties, the euphoria, all of it, after all is said and done.
Well, I think that this has not been any different than most years at Notre Dame, Roy. I just think there are certain things that go with the territory. And, you know, nothing's as good as it seems and nothing's as bad, but somewhere in between there reality falls. And that's just basically how we try to handle it.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about individual games now. First of all, take some real good stuff. Let's start with the Penn State game. It was the seniors' final farewell, and you guys win it on a 2-point conversion, you know, at the last of the game. That must have been a tremendous thrill for you, particularly, and for your seniors.
Well, it was great for our seniors. Penn State, I thought, was an outstanding football team, had an open date the week before us, and played exceptionally well. It was a weird game in the respect that we had an awful lot of snow during the game. The footing was treacherous, and so consequently, it was sort of a field position football game. I've had a lot of football teams drive the length of the field at the end of the game to win. I've never had a football team drive the length of the field and make a 2-point conversion. Mm-hmm. We did it against Penn State in 1987, but we weren't successful. And what was really intriguing, we used our 2-point conversion on 4th down and 3, so we didn't have any more timeouts and had to go to a grab bag, but it was a great win for our players. It was really a classy game.
Yeah. The BYU game is the game that people, now this is depending upon if he's a Holtz lover or a Holtz hater, they characterize it something different. Either it's the bear hug game or the stranglehold game involving the official. But the way you used the phrase, my interpretation, you were just trying to communicate your interpretation of what was happening on the field. And, of course, they photographed it and they showed it on videotape, and it looked like you were trying to choke the official. Let's talk a little bit about it. And I know you've talked about it to the press in the Midwest, but let's try to shed some light on it.
I think it's how people try to have it interpreted. I think that let's go through this series of events. Number one, Tom Thamer was laughing, and Tom called me on Monday and was embarrassed about all the adverse publicity it received, because if you were there, you understood the intention. There were about 6 or 7 calls that were very controversial, I felt, from our point of view. Many times I do not see it the way the officials see it, and I have to admit I'm a little bit biased. When I go back and look at the film, I find that they're right the majority of the time. This wasn't the case in this game. But there were an awful lot of calls, and the one in particular was we blitzed the linebacker, and I felt the guy put a headlock on him. Myself and 59,000 people saw it, and we weren't even looking for it. I could not understand how a guy who was paid could miss it. So, in frustration, I did not use profanity on the sideline. I grabbed my hat, and I threw it behind our bench. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The official called a 15-yard penalty on me.
Right.
It's the first one I've received in 22 years. Now, if I get 15 yards as a coach, I can't get it back. If a quarterback gets a 15-yard penalty, he can get it back. I can't. So now I'm going to get my money's worth. So I called timeout, and if I'm going to get 15 yards, I want to make my point.
Yeah.
So Tom Thamer came over, and I put my arm around his neck. Now, I never had contact with him, and I said, Tom, is this a penalty? Because if it isn't, we need to be teaching this technique, because it's a lot more effective than the one we're using. And he started laughing, and that was the whole conversation. Now, what happened with the media is they showed me put my arm around him and said I received a 15-yard penalty. penalty like this is what I got it for. It isn't. I got the penalty for throwing my hat behind the bench. Not on the field, not using any profanity or anything else along that line.
And you didn't touch him? Physically didn't touch him?
No, did not have any pressure on him. Just put my arm around him and said, you know, and it wasn't something, well, this is what I'm going to do. It's there. I wouldn't say I should have grabbed a player or something and said, hey, is this a penalty? But I've had Tom many times before. I hope I have many times again. He's an outstanding referee, has great control of the football game. Why'd I talk to Tom? Because he's in charge of the crew overall. Right. And once I got the 15-yard penalty, had I not got the 15-yard penalty, would have never said another word about it.
Do you think people single you out, not just because it's Notre Dame, but because it's Holtz? And Holtz is a guy that goes through the mood swings like anybody else under the microscope. Do you think the press likes to single you out?
Oh, I don't think that you can ever win an argument by complaining about the press or anything else. I think that the press, by and large, over the complete career has been very, very fair to me. But I think that I have had some unusual circumstances happen with members of the press, but I can't really worry about that. They have a job to do, and I have to believe they're professional and they're going to do it. But I do believe this. I don't believe that the press has any idea of how powerful they are. I don't think you have any idea about the influence you have. I know people talk about the power I have. I'm not even aware of it. But I do know this, that the TV commentators and the people that cover athletic events have a tremendous influence on the people in this country. And when you have tremendous influence, I think it even raises the obligation you have even more so.
I want to talk about second guessing in the Michigan game. We've talked about this from, 7, 8 weeks back, but here's an Irishman giving his point of view, and that's Jim Murray, the fine columnist in the LA Times. Would the four horsemen start falling on the ball? What would Grantland Rice write? Outlined against the blue-gray September sky, the four horsemen fell on the football. Would Rockne send in orders to pack it in and hide the football and sue for peace? An Irishman ducking a fight? Say 5 Our Fathers at once. This is an Irishman saying this.
Well, there's nobody that I respect anymore for his literary talents and abilities or his tremendous amount of honors he's won. I mean, Jim Murray is one of the great writers of all time. But I think it's also obvious Jim Murray has some eyesight problems, and I think that's pretty well documented. We did not fall on the football. I'm not going to be defensive. It's the second game of the year. Michigan was an outstanding football team. We had 3 turnovers in the football game. We get the ball, I don't know, on approximately our 14-yard line with 1 or 2 timeouts left. The score's tied. I don't have any idea what Michigan's going to do on defense. They had changed their defense. They have 3 timeouts. The one thing I was convinced of, we were not going to punt the football. We have 2 fine snappers. One had a broken hand, and the other one got a 6-inch gash in his hand during the course of the game. We rolled the ball back on punts twice the 2 preceding times. So there's no way we're going to punt the football. That's first and foremost. I want to win the football game, but we are not going to punt that sucker. We run a draw. We pick up 8 yards. I thought maybe Michigan would use a timeout then. They did not.
You lose 30 seconds.
Okay, but no, we didn't lose quite that much. Now, the second time, we ran the draw again to get the 1st and 10 to find out how much cushion they had. The second time is when I made the mistake. I guess maybe 15, 20 times since I've been at Notre Dame, we've gotten the ball just before the half or just before the end of the game, and never once have we failed to either have a legitimate chance to catch a ball in the end zone or kick a winning field goal. That's documented. So we have plenty of time to score. We run the draw and get the 1st down. But what bothered me, it should have been a big game, but we got a penalty. We got a penalty. I was upset about the thing, and where I blew it was I forgot that they changed the rule 2 years ago, and they start the clock after the penalty.